Hello, hello, hello. I'm Darren Yoho, the dude himself, here for another video. Today we are going to, okay, pause. So I'm in our spare bedroom, got this nice old crappy reclining chair. It's a pretty nice chair, so putting it to good use today. Anyways, our commander video we're going to show today is a deck tech video of Edric, Spymaster of Trest, who's a super cool general if you haven't played him. He's an old school, I guess, kind of old school general. He came back out in the original Ravnica block, and he's blue-green, Simic colors, 3 mana, 2/2. Whenever one of your creatures, whenever a creature deals combat damage to your opponents, that player gets to draw a card. So it can be very political, as well as accrue a ton of card advantage with that draw power. So I put that to good use. I've been playing a lot of commander games with him, and so far he's done really well. Only games I've ever done kind of bad with him is games I kind of got land screwed, but that happens to everybody, right? So let's proceed with the video. Alrighty, here we are with the cards themselves. There is Edric, the man of the hour, Spymaster extraordinaire. Super cool card, he's a lot of fun. I mean, he even makes a lot of people's 99 section as well, if not, you know, being the general. Just a very fun card, and he can be very political at times as well. That card draw really entices people to not attack you until you start becoming a problem. And then either way, they're going to attack you. But until then, it's super fun. Start with our lands. We'll put you off to the side, Edric. Spymaster will spy from afar. I have 11 islands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 8 forests. The reason why I do this, it's a little more blue than green heavy. Again, when I build my decks, I build them to my preference, just like anybody else builds them to their preference. I have almost 0 mana acceleration or ramp. Yeah, it's green, but you know what? The way I built this deck is that it's not needed. One of my philosophies with Sol Ring is you should basically always have it in the 99. There's almost no reason why you shouldn't have it. If there were ever a case where I don't really need it, this is probably the deck. I really just don't need a ton of mana for this. It's got a very, very, very low curve. But a lot of my creatures are blue based, so I'd rather have that blue in my opening hand than the green. But I have 8 forests. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then my multicolor lands got Vivid Creek, Vivid Grove. With these, another thing about this is it's very aggressive and pretty fast. It comes out the gates hot, so you don't want a lot of lands. At least I personally didn't want a lot of lands that come to play tapped. I need my stuff to be able to hit play and me to be able to use it early on. It's just a must. One of the lands I'm definitely missing is Flooded Grove. I don't have that. I don't have the blue-green dual land. I can't remember the name, but I don't have it. Either way, you know, hey, I wish I could, but I can't. Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, Yavimaya Coast, Mana Confluence. Now, I run that and City of Brass in this. The only reason being, only reason is that I also run Mind Over Matter, which we'll get to later. I run a couple cards that are a little mana intensive where I'd rather have more than one or the other, and I want to make sure I can hit that multi-blue or multi-green in the casting cost. So ideally it's not very optimal to run these in a 2-color deck because it's not really necessary. Versus like a 4-color or 5-color or 3-color, what have you. But in this, I actually do need that multicolor land that they give. The 1 damage is often very irrelevant. Simic Growth Chamber, Command Tower, Hinterland Harbor, Reflecting Pool. Gotta have the pool. Both pools. This is a pool-based deck. My theme here, it's a very specific theme. I theme pools. Okay. Reliquary Tower. Note, again, because I have a lot of mana intensive symbols in my card's casting cost, I don't have very many colorless lands at all. Very, very few. Reliquary Tower is one of the most absolutely necessary cards in this deck, so it has to make the cut. From here on out, my lands are man lands. Man lands are very important for this because they're them cheap early game creatures that also act as mana sources. Evasion creatures are key with my version of Edric, so Inkmoth Nexus was a absolute shoo-in. It also gives me that infect mode, which doubles as a secondary win condition. Blinkmoth Nexus, the cousin of Inkmoth. Fairy Conclave, it's also a flyer, so that's very relevant. Treetop Village, 3/3 with trample. I mean, it's not as great as a flyer. I'd rather have a flyer, but hey, when you're in a pinch and you just want to swing with an extra creature, it'll do. Dryad Arbor. This is a super awesome card to get with a turn 1 Green Sun Zenith. Pull out that Dryad Arbor. Now, we are done with our lands. I run 37 lands. I can honestly probably go down to 36 or even 35. My preference is I'd rather run more lands than necessary so that way I don't miss my land drops. I find I miss my land drops way too often with my decks. Hate that. I hate that. That can wreck you. Now my creatures. I have 35 creatures, 13 of which are 1 mana, 1/1s with evasion. That is a super, super awesome point to my Edric. It's a lot of small, fast, evasive creatures. That means my damage is going through. It may only be 3 or 4, maybe even only 5, 2 damage, something like that at a time, but it's going to go through because they all have evasion. Chances are my stuff is gonna hit. I'm gonna draw a bunch of cards. Case closed. That's the theme. Straight, simple, no tricks. What you see is what you get. Bibbidi bobbidi boo. So, we got the Cloudfin Raptor with that evolution. I think at most he's been a 2/3. Flying Men. I like the joke at the table. It's raining men. Hallelujah. It's raining men. Amen. Now, I had the option to buy the white border for 40 cents or the black border for $1. Totally spent $1. Jace's Phantasm. Cloud Pirates. Spire Tracer. Zephyr Sprite. Wingcrafter. Wingcrafter, I always leave that soul bond for Edric. He does not have evasion. Soul or Wingcrafter gives him that soul bonding flying. So that makes him evasive as well. Gale Rider Sliver. Hey, it's a 1 mana 1/1 flyer. Perfect. Scrib Sprites. Triton Shorestalker. Can't be blocked. It's basically perfect. Treetop Scout. Veil of Birds. Alright, now this actually isn't a 1 mana 1/1 flyer. It's an enchantment. But if an opponent successfully casts a spell, it becomes a 1/1 flying bird. So I pretty much count it as a 1/1 flyer. A little bit of secret old Urza Saga jank tech there. Cloud of Fairies. This thing will poop out creatures. Usually whenever I get it, I paint a target on myself, and turn 1 I'll put a Veil of Birds out. Turn 2 I'll play this, untap my lands, play 2 more of these. Something like that. Sage Owl. Now, it's a good 1/1 flyer for 2 mana. If I get it turn 2, swell, I get that 4 card top deck manipulation. It's not a huge deal. I'm usually drawing a ton with Spymaster or Trest, so it's often irrelevant, but if I'm in a pickle, sure. Invisible Stalker, it's invisible. Basically what I want in a creature. Snapcaster does not have any evasion, but I do run a ton of instants and sorceries. Well, I guess not a ton, but I run good ones that I would want to recur, so it's relevant. Augury Owl, about the same as that Sage Owl, except that scry is a little better. I often find that I'm just tossing them to the bottom. Sakura Tribe Elder, it's a 2 mana 1/1 fetch. That's pretty much all I use it for. Blighted Agent, again with that infect, it's a secondary win con, and that actually happens quite frequently. Thalaco Seer, 2 mana 1/1 Shadow. Who runs Shadow in EDH? Nobody runs Shadow, so he's going to hit. If you kill it or board wipe, I get to draw a card. It's if he leaves play, so it doesn't matter. Scavenging Ooze. I like to build my decks. Whenever I build a deck, I want to make sure I cover as many bases as possible. Now, there are more optimal cards for this deck. I don't have one card I wish I definitely had is a Silhana Ledgewalker from one of the old Ravnica sets, not the newer ones. It's can only be blocked by creatures with flying, and it has hexproof for 2 mana. It themes with my cheap evasive creatures, but I don't have it and I honestly can't find it. Scavenging Ooze is good to cover my bases, but I often find that I'm not even casting him, I'm tossing him because I have too many cards in hand or something. He's not very game changing whenever I draw him. I'd rather have an evasive creature to draw more cards with Edric. But he's good because he's cheap, he fits the theme, and he covers bases, I guess. Thada Adele, a little bit of evasion. Also, she's another one of those cards I don't really play that often because I'd rather just put out a 1/1 for 1 mana and have a flyer. But she's fun. Kira is awesome. She helps protect my stuff. Protect your stuff, yay! Trigun Predator. This thing is a very underrated card. If you're running blue-green, it's an excellent creature whenever it deals damage, which it's got flying, so chances are it'll probably hit. Destroy an artifact or enchantment that player controls. Excellent little removal on a stick. A flying stick, to boot. Eternal Witness. It's a must-have in any deck that runs green. Reclamation Sage. My Edric deck isn't very counter-heavy. I think I may run 2 or 3 counter spells. We'll get to those later. I do run a lot of enchantment and artifact hate. And Reclamation Sage fits my mana curve because I want to have a low curve. It's a cheap creature. Oh well, if it dies, all I want to do is hit play. One thing that'll really wreck me is something like Propaganda or Ghostly Prison. Those things will really affect me because I don't have a lot of mana at times, and I have a lot of little creatures. So something like that could really slow me down. Mystic Snake. Who don't run the Mystic Snake in the Simic? Nobody. Everybody run the Mystic Snake. It's Mystic. Oracle of Moldiah. Basically, baller, enough said. Phyrexian Metamorph, a little bit of copying effects. It's cheap. Thalicos Deceiver. It's another one of those shadowy creatures. Shadow. That for 4 mana, it's a 1/1 shadow. Whenever it deals damage, or was it? Whenever it's not blocked, yeah, attacks and is not blocked, I can sack it and steal a creature. Pretty awesome. Glen Elendra Archmage, flying counter spell on a stick. Acidic Slime, a little bit of enchantment hate. Also targets lands, so that can be relevant too. Meloku the Clouded Mirror. Here's where we start getting into our higher costing stuff. I think I may have like, shoot, I don't know, 3 or 4 cards that are like 5 or higher. Not very many in the creature department. So I have a very low creature curve. Meloku fits that bill with that 1 mana, return a creature or return a land, put out a 1/1 flyer. It's pretty much a game ender, especially with Edric. Kamal, Fist of Corrosa. When you want to close out a game, pour 5 mana to make all your 1/1s 4/4s. Boom. Enough said. It can also be really sneaky if people want to board wipe you, because often that happens. And you can pay that 1 green and start popping people's lands as a little bit of revengeance. So, 35 creatures. Very low curve. Very aggressively playing. Now, we're going into my removal. I run, I think, 10 removal cards. And again, only like 2 or 3 very choice-specific counterspells. So, a lot of people like to run a very counter-heavy Edric. I don't. Just my preference, really. I mean, you can run a lot of counter spells and less creature removal. I chose the artifact removal, enchantment removal. Unravel the Aether. It's a very sneaky card that came out in Theros. Honestly, I hated that block. I liked it about as much as I like the Kamigawa block. Again, as a disclaimer, my opinion. Sorry if you liked it. Oh well, it's my opinion. But this is a super awesome card. Tucks an artifact for enchantment.
Dead Glamour. Same thing, came out in them Lorwyn sets. Tucks an artifact or enchantment. Gets rid of them gods, that's for sure. Tuck them gods, bruh. Corrosive Grip, artifact, enchantment, removal. Split Second. Reality Shift, a fun card from the Con set that exiles a creature in blue. So what? So I manifest you a 2-mana, or I'm sorry, a morph creature. Oh well, I'll take that. I reality shifted a Kozilek one time. You know what? I don't care what you get. I got rid of a Kozilek for 2 blue, or 2 mana. Beast Within destroys a permanent. The token's irrelevant. Void Slime. I really had to work to put Void Slime in here. Void Slime is a very good counterspell at 3 mana because it hits activated and triggered abilities. That can be a very versatile card in a lot of situations, surprisingly. Forbid. This thing is a freaking all-star with Edric because I'm drawing a ton of cards and I will always pay that buyback. I won one game because I locked people out. I had like 9 lands out, so I didn't have to play Forbid a couple times. All I did was attack with Edric, keep my cards in hand, as many as I could, and pass turn. You know, if you played anything relevant, Forbid it, dump 2 to buy it back. You play something, counter it, dump 2, buy it back. Forbid is a very excellent card, and it's actually very cheap too. I think it's only $1 or something, a couple bucks. Spell Crumple. Being that they got rid of the tuck rule, which is complete poop in my opinion, I really like the tuck rule even though it affected me too. Spell Crumple has lost its luster, but I still like it. I still run it, so to each his own. You could run Counterspell for 1 mana less if you like. It does not matter. It's just my preference, really. Devastation Tide. I want to note this would be an evacuation if I had one. I don't have one, and for some reason I just feel lazy and I don't feel like going out and finding one, so you can shame me all you want. I'm lazy, I'll admit it. Devastation Tide is just fine. I'll deal with that. But evacuation would be in here if I had it. Cyclonic Rift. Basically one of my favorite blue cards ever. Now we're getting into what little ramp stuff I got. Exploration. Now, exploration works well when you're thinking ahead. Now, when I was building this, I'm thinking, okay, what can I benefit? What can I do to help capitalize on drawing a ton of cards? Well, I'm probably going to draw a land. Some part of them draws. If I'm attacking with 4 creatures, drawing 4 cards, I'm probably going to hit a land. Exploration. Play that extra land. Get it out there. Speed you up a little bit. It has actually paid off very well. Soul Ring, pretty self-explanatory. Green Sun Zenith. I would say probably 90% of the time, if not more. I'm just pulling a Dryad Arbor out. I think one time I pulled out Trigon Predator, if you're having trouble with some artifacts or enchantments, something like that. I mean, you got a little bit of options. If nothing else, just pull out a 1/1 with flying or some Scrib Sprites, for crying out loud. Coastal Piracy. Coastal Piracy and its other, more better cousin, Bident of Thassa. When I build decks, I also don't want to capitalize too much on my general. I want to be able to win without my general. You know, if somebody, I don't know, plays Nevermore and says Edric, I don't want to have to just scoop, you know. I want to be able to keep playing. I want to be able to play through the pain. So I run these 2 in it. Often they're dead weights. I have yet to play them. I think I played Bident of Thassa once, and that was because of its second ability, because I was making other people attack. And for some reason, it was to my benefit. I can't remember why, but it was to my benefit to make people attack. So that's the only reason I played it. Other than that, I have yet to play Coastal Piracy. I've played over a dozen games with this deck and in various play groups, situations. I played in the Fantasy Shop. I play in Alpha Omega Gaming. You know, a bunch of different places, and even in multiple situations, I have yet to play either of them really. But they're fun to have and they theme with the deck. Mind Over Matter. This thing is kind of going into my game ending section of cards, because if I get this out, I'm drawing a poop ton of cards with Edric's ability. I am either A, untapping my lands and pretty much playing out whatever's in my hand, or I've got enough cards to tap you down to make sure all my stuff is slamming into you, or C, I got enough stuff to stave off any type of attack. Pick your poison. Either way, it's win, 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 try winning. That's 3 wins. Try winning. Get Edric out there before I mix them up. Nature's Will. This is another one of those cards that if I get this out there, I will most likely win the game. All I need is 1 creature to deal combat damage, and boom, I untap all my lands, get a second play phase with all my mana. That's amazing. And this card is only like $1, maybe $2 at most. I got this for $1. I have like 3 or 4 of them. I picked them up when they were cheap. It's amazing. It's a great card. Now the tapping opponent's lands is very irrelevant. Untapping all your lands, super, super relevant. Druid Repository. That's another card that had literally just last night I played a game at Alpha Omega Gaming, and this card helped me win the game from a very vicious disadvantaged position. I pulled the biggest comeback ever. When you're attacking with 3, 5, 1 mana 1/1s with flying at a time, you're putting a ton of counters on this. That's like doubling your mana almost. It's super, super powerful, and it's another one of those cheap rares that it's very good. It's surprisingly good. Sword of Feast and Famine. Now, overall, Edric can be a very price-efficient deck, cost-wise, money-wise. Swords aren't very... you don't need them. I put this one in here because it allows me to untap my lands. That's my favorite sword for that purpose only, literally. So I put it on something, I just want to deal damage, I want to untap my lands, get an extra play after I draw all those cards with Edric. But it's not needed. I can make do with Nature's Will. Triumph of the Hordes. This will close out a game. I've closed out games turn 4 or 5. That fast. If you get the right creatures out and play, all your stuff, all your 1/1 flyers become 2/2s with Infect. That's over. That's a game over. I've won so many games with this card. And again, it's probably worth maybe 50 cents. Super effective card, even in a token build. If you're running tokens, this can close out multiple opponents. I mean, just knock them out, that 10 damage. Sword of Fire and Ice. Again, this card isn't very necessary. You don't need it. Now, one card I don't have a second copy of, it's in my Prosh deck at the moment, is Beastmaster Ascension. That would definitely make this cut. It's a 3-mana green enchantment that whenever a creature you control attacks, you put a counter on it, and whenever Beastmaster Ascension has 7 or more counters, all your creatures get +5/+5. That would definitely make this cut because it's very easy for me to attack with 7 creatures within 1 to 2 turns at the very latest. Now, something you don't want to leave sit out, but you slip it out there, boom boom, somebody's dead. Sword of Fire and Ice. It's one of those cards that it's extra draw, a little bit extra damage. It's not very necessary though. So price-wise, it's not necessary. You can definitely find something else to put in there. Same with Sword of War and Peace. My thoughts with this one, because it's kind of one of the less famous swords, is if other people are attacking other people, like my opponents with Spymaster Trest's ability, they're drawing cards. So everybody should ideally have a decent amount of cards in hand. Well, if so, then Sword of War and Peace will hammer out a lot of damage, and I will gain a ton of life. I always have a huge hand, if not just ungodly amounts of cards. So ideally, in a perfect world, it would be fantastic. But again, the swords aren't necessary. Crown of Doom. Crown of Doom is a super fun card that came out in the new Commander products. For 5 mana, 3 to play it, 2 to use it and give it to somebody else. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, gets +2/+0. This gives all my numerous 1 mana 1/1s, 2 mana 1/1s with flying a little extra bite. This makes them something substantial. And that damage will add up fast when you're attacking with 3, 4, 5, 1/1s with flying. That makes them 3 1s with flying. So that adds up really fast. It's also a very interactive card. It's fun to play in multiplayer. Bribery. Who doesn't like bribery? Fun haters don't like bribery. Bribery is awesome. Crystal Shard. This is a backup card. It's mostly used to maybe save Edric from a theft mechanic, or more importantly, to reuse my Eternal Witness and Snapcaster Mage. That's pretty much what it's there for. And I know it's a very slim usage that I'm getting out of it just for those small reasons, but those small reasons are very big ones. Praetor's Council. It's a very high casting cost card. I think it's actually the most expensive mana cost card in the deck. But what it does is worth gold, because I have a huge amount of cards in my graveyard due to just simply drawing too much and having to discard. This allows me to A, have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game, and return all those cards in my graveyard to my hand. It's amazing. Elixir of Immortality. Again, I don't want to mill myself out, and I don't want somebody to catch me when I'm not on my A game and tap me with a mill card and just hammer me, because again, I'm drawing a bunch, discarding a bunch. It happens. That's the name of the game with Edric. This is a very underused card, and the more and more I play, the more and more I see people are just throwing it in their decks just for a little bit of backup. So it's a fun card. Alright, let's get serious for a minute. Walk the Aeons. I'll go ahead and do Notorious Throng as well, but Walk the Aeons and Notorious Throng are the only two extra turn cards I run. That's it. A lot of people, again, in most other builds that I've seen, they run a ton, like 4 or 5, different extra turn cards, maybe even more. They'll run a lot of extra turn cards, and it'll just make Edric one of those decks that just aren't fun to play with. Well, I don't do that. I only run 2. Only reason why I run these ones is this one has buyback, so I can actually get an extra usage out of this one card. I might get 2. Usually I get about 2 uses out of it. Notorious Throng is a super fun card out of those mysteriously overpowered lore win sets. That it's a tribal spell with Rogue, which I will have you note that he is a rogue. So for the prow cost of 6 mana, I can put X 1/1 fairies into play, where X is the amount of damage dealt to my opponents this turn, and take an extra card. This is a super fun card to play. Even if I don't get damage in with Edric, which, I want to keep him alive, so sometimes I don't attack with him. For 4 mana, I can get a ton of extra 1/1 flyers. I can get 5, 6, that's a substantial amount for 4 mana. And then, last but not least, Garruk, the Lonely Wildspeaker. He is there because A, he untaps my lands, and I run a low curve, low land count. Puts out tokens, which, I usually don't use it for that. But he also gives me that overrun effect, so that's actually really relevant with my creatures. All in all, it's a very simple deck. It's not complicated. You don't take a lot of extra turns. You don't counter everybody's stuff. You just play the game. You attack a lot, you play a lot of creatures, you do a lot of attacking, and you draw a lot of cards. That's basically everything everybody wants in the life of a Magic game. So, if you like to play creatures, if you like to attack, if you like to be political, if you like to draw cards, if you like your friends to draw cards, Edric, Spymaster of Trest, is the man for you. Vote Edric 2016.